Hello everyone, this is Priscilla, Assistant Professor, Department of English. Today we'll see about the short story The Luncheon by Somerset Maugham. His full name is William Somerset Maugham. First, we'll see about the author introduction. William Somerset Maugham was a British playwright, novelist, and short story writer. He was one of the most popular writers of his time and highest paid authors of the age 30s. Although such a good writer, Maugham never attracted the highest respect from critics or peers, something which he attributed to the lack of his lyrical quality, limited vocabulary, and his failure to make expert use of metaphor in his work. Markham's public view of his abilities remained modest. Toward the end of his career, he described himself as in every first row of second raters. In 1948, he wrote Great Novelists and Their Novels, in which he listed the 10 best novels of world literature in his opinion. In 1954, he was made a Companion of Honor. A significant work include of Human Bondage, The Moon and Sixpence, and Cakes and LA. Let's get into the story now. The Luncheon is a short story by William Somerset Maugham. The short story begins with the narrator meeting one of his acquaintances in the theater. They had met after a long time, 20 years later, and the narrator found it hard to recognize her. The acquaintance example, a lady, recognized him immediately and asked him if he remembered the last and first time they had met. She reminded him that he had asked her out for luncheon. The narrator quickly remembers what had happened and now he tells us the story. After 20 years ago, the narrator was living in Paris. He had a small apartment in Latin Quarter. He describes his income as just enough to keep body and soul together. One of his books were read by that lady and she wrote him to about it. He thanked her and in a few days received another letter from her saying that she was passing through Paris and would like to have a chat. The narrator took some time to decide where to take her for lunch. He finally considered Foyot's, which was a restaurant where many Frenchers senators ate, and although it was a little expensive for a narrator, he was flattered by the lady's compliments and decided to cut down cost by drinking no coffee for the next 2 weeks. He had 80 gold francs to last him the month. It's assumed that a decent lunch wouldn't cost him more than 50 bucks. So he asked the lady out for luncheon, a formal lunch at Foyot's. The lady did not turn out to be young, as the narrator had expected. She was in her 40s. The narrator described the lady as having more teeth than necessary, example talkative and unattractive. The narrator decided to listen more and talks less. The menu startled the narrator as the prices were higher than what he had estimated. The lady reassured him by telling him that she never had more than one items for lunch. The narrator generously said, "Please don't say that," but he dearly wishes she ate only one item. She ordered salmon and caviar for herself, and the narrator ordered cheapest dish on the menu, a mutton chop, for himself. All the while, the lady told him that meat was a heavy dish and that he should follow her example and eat only one dish, although she was clearly having more than one. After the meal, she ordered white cabbage which further sank the narrator's heart as he focused his thoughts on what the bill would sum up to. He only ordered water. The lady enjoyed the meal and kept talking about art, literature, and music. When the waiter arrived with the bill, she waved him aside and wanted to know if they had any asparagus at the restaurant. The narrator wished the waiter would say no, but the waiter smiled and told them that they had large, tender, fresh, and miraculously juicy ones. The lady ordered asparagus and asked the narrator if he wanted to as well. The narrator refused and made an excuse that he don't like asparagus. Our narrator was seized by panic. Now he began to think if he would have enough money to pay the bill. The asparagus arrived and the narrator described the lady as shamelessly thrusting the asparagus down her throat. After the lunch, the narrator asked her if she wanted coffee, to which she replied yes, just an ice cream and coffee. The narrator had stopped worrying about the cost now. He ordered her both. After the luncheon, just when they were about to get up, the waiters appeared with a large basket of fresh peaches, much to the dismay of our narrator. The narrator refused for himself, but the lady took one peach. She kept thinking that the one mutton chop he had ruined his appetite. It was not the season of peaches, so the narrator had to pay extra. After the bill came, he had only 3 francs left, and that too he paid as the tip. After the luncheon, when it was a time for them to leave, the lady advised him to follow her example and eat only one dish for lunch, which was ironical coming from someone like her, who had just had a whole stomach full for lunch. The narrator replied by saying, I will do better than that. I will eat nothing for dinner tonight. The lady called him a humorist. This was again ironical because the narrator really meant it. He did not have a single penny in his pocket and he had the whole month left. After 20 years, this brings us back to the present time where the narrator and the lady are meeting after 20 long years. The narrator tells us that he had his revenge for the Luncheon ordeal. The lady weighed 130 kg now and 21 stones and 294 pounds, which is the same as around 130 kg. The narrator observed this result with a pardonable sense of achievement. Let us see the conclusion now. The story is an example of irony. The lady exploits the narrator by pretending an interest and admiration for his work, which she might not even actually feel. The irony is that the narrator takes her to an expensive restaurant where he had never dared to go himself, as he could not afford it. The lady probably understood his financial situation and took him for a ride. The story is laced with humor and irony, which makes it comical in the truest sense. The author has accepted the invitation of the lady because he is educated, polite, and moreover, he has come from a family with good tradition. The pitiable thing is that the lady offers him nothing and jumps into the cab. She calls him a humorist for his generous act. Thank you.